Greetings. This is that wonderful welcome that Grandmother Flora de Mayo gave us. And I'm not sure, so I'm not going to misquote her on the culture or the peoples that this comes from, but it does belong to all of us, starseeds. That I am very clear. And again, right here, I can feel your energy coming back to me. And this hand right here is offering all that I have in my solar plexus, my intent, my will, my love, my heart, my voice. It's offering it out. And it's so, so good. I feel like the chakras right in here tingle when I take it in and breathe into it. And of course, to those that know, Wakanda is that hug, hug, hug. We've been missing our hugs here lately in the pandemic. Well, here we are, can you believe, moments probably from what they call a storm burst here on Humble Hill, where the sky, clouds up a little bit, but hey, that I'm even outside, backyard of bamboo, able to just really catch up with my friend Tracy, whose birthday, our South of the Wheel, Kindred of Sangoma Wheel, was yesterday, and her husband's birthday is Monday, and it's just a really good time. My middle daughter's birthday kicked off the week on Monday, and I've got lots of folks in here. Akeem Bade in Charlotte, he was this week, and Derek, who, I never forget any of my friends, and they're like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 in July. And it makes us feel good. So we came up on our way to the Growing Goddess rite of passage and said, yeah, we'll come to your barbecue, Rob. You sure right, and we'll sit out here on this beautiful garden that I hope we get to share with you from Humble Hill. It's amazing. It's amazing. You just bring water to my eyes to be completely surrounded in the mountains that I dream of it. I dream of it when I'm just too far low. I can't even see a hill in Georgia or the low country of South Carolina. I dream of sitting right where I'm sitting with you right now on Humble Hill. It's that great. So I wanted to start here in this wonderful little book. I'm going to hold it up. Sometimes I pick this book up and not too often, definitely not as often as I should. And when at this time in today's little talk with you, Tracy and I are going to talk about things like nonviolent communication. We're going to go back and do a rewind, kind of what spiritual medicines and medicines of empowerment have we digested since the summer, since the summer solstice, since summer came on in. And one of that is, we're not, I don't think there are any slow people out here that recognize that everyone's not choosing their finest words or their kindest words. And so people are tripping and falling about how to make these adjustments in their communication skills. With that in mind, I'm going to share this little quote that I always do. Books is an oracle. The least I can say for myself is that I forcibly or forcefully created for myself under extreme hostile conditions my ideal life. How many of us will be able to look back next summer to this time in our lives and go, yeah, it was pretty crazy, but the bottom line is it propelled me to design and live out loud my ideal life. I took an obscure and almost unknown village in the southern African bush and made it my own hallowed ground. Here in the steadiness and peace of my own world, I could dream a little ahead of somewhat vicious clamor of revolution and the horrible stench of evil social systems. That speaks to it for me, and these conversations that are waiting to be had, that we're going to kind of chew on a little bit with you and hopefully activate some thoughts, because we've got, yeah, we could, you might know, if you didn't catch the Lighthouse Summer Solstice Lighthouse Summit, it is on the Kindred of Sangoma YouTube channel. And what can it do now, midway to Lammas and midway to the West Gate of the fall, of the leaves coming off the tree on our way to winter? That's the only thing to do with it now, is go back and see, yeah, all right, was I over there? Where was I? How am I moving? What do I still need to put in place? What do I need to navigate? And these are not things you buy at the store. These are things that you want to have real conversations with yourself, or like this, we're gonna party and eat plenty of ribs, but when Tracy and I get together, we recognize that we definitely are two people that will, no doubt, we won't shy away from the hard and powerful conversations. That's our friendship, our sisterhood is strong enough to take it. It's proved the test of time. And so that's why we're doing it, to see. So here we are, moving into mid-July. Blessings, right? All around. We have 2 planets out of 6 that are now gone back direct, Venus and Mercury. And we wanted to speak a little bit about this. And I asked Tracy if I got running off on this to rein me in. But, here's the thing, because I feel like when I post Kai Pacha or Steve Judd or Pam Gregory or Molly McCord, and I'm glad you can rewind and catch those names again, because again, on Classroom Collective or in Mystic School of Alchemy, you're always going to see the update from any of the people I just mentioned. And yet, I know what it is. Of course, I can remember back to before I was a priest and had big, long courses in astrology. And all I could do was read the horoscope in the newspaper too. And then to navigate through the positions and aspects and what does that mean down here in my world, my money, my love life, and I couldn't figure it out. It was like, how does that match up with this? So I'm going to give just a little formula here, and it might help you just a little bit. It's almost like an introduction to the introduction of astrology. But in our world, just those 2, Mercury, planet closest to this one, is thought in many cultures and traditions, and that's a bigger, longer story of when we really study deep, but I'm giving you the highlights, remember. Think of it as getting on a subway or getting on a bus or getting on a train, that you are going into something. Always think of it like that. We call this energy, this force of nature, Alegba, the owner of the roads, the owner of how we are heard, what we speak, our communication, how we hear other people. In the Greek pantheon is Hermes, the messenger, very much that aspect. In some of your Native American cultures, it's the trickster, very much some of that aspect. All of that's wrapped up in Mercury. Thus, you can understand why people get a little more quiet and a little more still when Mercury goes retrograde. You say, oh, yeah, I tried to tell you. It was so confusing. And no, don't sign nothing. And no, don't buy no houses and no car. No, don't do nothing like that. That involves exchanges of communications of how we speak to one another. You want that energy moving direct. You want those roads open and those opportunities right there. And so, in another class of altars, we talk about what is the energy when we feed it. How do we feed that energy when it's retrograde in order to power ourselves up for when it turns back direct and we can move forward? Venus, it would be so hard to believe that people don't understand Venus in our world as an aspect, but maybe, whether you've heard it as the goddess of love or sensuality or sexuality, or her as Zuli down in Brazil, or Aphrodite, or Oshun. Oshun, that ability to take the harshest fire of Shango or arguments or volatility and go to the rivers, go rafting for a day, roll out on her river and see that calming, harmonious feeling that all of the vibration of your physical will go into. Watch that edge of flowers just coming up into bloom after a really cold and rough winter. Very much about beauty, how things blossom in us. kind of where the old people would tell you, catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. So Oshun always brings sweetness to the situation. And so we see that those are now moving direct in the midst of this. In the midst of this, it will remind you, wouldn't it? You know, that in all this volatility and death and people dying, that it could be much worse. You can see the work of Oshun. Then we were just talking about it this morning from the young lady who said, oh, isn't the good news for everyone today that Black people only want justice? They don't want revenge. You see, and that is Oshun at her best. To say, despite the atrocities or the adversities or the negatives in the room, that positive, that love pushes back the darkness, that place where we can come from a more creative space to fully affect in such a sweet and loving way, like rocking a little new baby. We can make it, we can settle it down, we can make it all right. Oshun, just a million things to do, and you can get there all with a dance with a fan and some bells, but that's another story. And we hope we'll do this one day. We'll take you energetically through each of these planets and their place in the force of nature. So as Oshun is over the rivers of our planet, so is she over the rivers of our bodies. A plague is loose. We have to pay attention to the fluids and in here. And can COVID attach? Or how is the viral strength of our own immune system? We are so glad that Oshun is moving direct right through here. And then, of course, you have Mars, Ogun, that forceful energy. Think football, think wrestling, think boxing, think anything that is masculinity, just forceful. Okay, or Aries, direct. Mars, a freight train. Okay, powers like that you don't necessarily stop. And in their ugliness or in their negativity, war, death, gunfire, cannons, nuclear bombs. Tough. On the positive, if we embody the positive, that Mars energy, that masculinity, that it is everywhere. It's in the men and it's in the women. Masculine and the feminine, that balance of buffalo woman and the pipe, stem in the bowl. Endurance. You have the archetype of the blacksmith till that sword is forged, till that metal is forged, heated and forged. Doesn't give up. Consistency, endurance, stamina. There are so many good things to take from an energy that doesn't die. I look at my elders right now, and this guy want to be just like them when they grow up. Why? Because they rolling with Ogun at 85, 90 years old, 81 years old. Boo. I just had an elder drive from New York to Oyachinji African Village. Not playing. Stopped in Richmond, went here, over here. She getting ready to bring out her Egungun. And they move with an energy that reminds you of a freight train. It might slow down a little bit, pause for a slight stop, but likely they be moving steady on course. Mars. Neptune. Neptune is the deep. It's all up in my Pisces. Pisces is the ruler of Pisces. How do you find or know Neptune down here on planet Earth? Well, go down where the whales live and the big prehistoric creatures of old in the abyss of the ocean. No one knows what lies at the bottom of the sea. That's what they say about a locum. This is not the tides or the waves. This is the deep, where things are murky. They're not very clear. This could be our dream time. This could be the illusions that we choose to continue living and talking and, adopting as some sort of crazy reality. Illusions, visions that maybe sometimes are distorted. Maybe sometimes those who are prophetic dreamers see absolutely clearly what's about to happen. Again, so you have that positive and negative. In the positive, seers, clairvoyance, clairaudience, people who have the sight. Lokuna is my mother, so sometimes then we see things, we have to place where it exactly lands in real time on the earth, but we know we are seeing through other dimensions, other veils, other realities. This is real. If we weren't so doggone busy in the machine world and we're in nature more, and you wonder why do people say, take time in nature now? You hear how a lot of people are advising that in terms of staying calm, less stress, good for you. The sunlight is good for you. It's also that we can let go of those things that have our mind and our focus preoccupied so that we actually can receive the downloads. Have you ever really considered that? That God's talking to you, but it's like you're not even home, or I don't know, you don't hear the knock. And you know, we say God quite quickly, but it could be whatever you consider that energy of creator of all there is, the Arcturians, the Palladians, whatever you consider that to be. They are the time it would take for you to quiet down enough to go, oh, you were talking to me? And it would happen. So, because again, the veils are thinnest as we're moving now. Trying to tell you, 2020 into 2022, all twos to 2024, epic. And most people that have any idea, that have studied various prophecies and various writings and teachings. Thus, Trace and I are going to get to the conversations that were just mind-blowing in the harmonic conversion. And yeah, you would want to go back and try to find a few of those videos to say, well, let me just anchor where we could possibly be going by September or October. All right, so then where are we up there? Shango, Uranus, sudden eruptive energy. Like in a minute, you know, thunder or lightning could happen here in a second. You didn't have to even be prepared for it. Could just, I think Tracy said that a minute. She said, well, I don't know if you're going to get to do it. I hear some rumbles. Sudden eruptive energy. Don't we have a lot of that lately? Where we're moving along fine or as best as we can through our day. And then we get a COVID call, or a call that someone has died, or a call that this has happened, or for God's sake, the news is on in somebody's house for a minute, and we have to be able to balance that sudden eruptive energy that comes into our consciousness, what to do with it, where to put it, how to digest it, what part of it is necessary to our forward progression, and which parts of it is just news passing by. Oh, I hope you rewind that part. For all of the outside clamor and noise in our world right now, how much of it is useful to you, and how? That's where these questions are going to go. And what part of it do you need to just let it keep going by and know that it's not even necessarily yours to make a decision about today? And who else is out there? Saturn, the winter taskmaster, Baba Luaye. Why? Because as hot as it is, you can get through the day and your errands and your work and do whatever you do and have a hot, a cold drink, ice, and sit in the shade. And you can come back to a real. When it's cold, cold is just the opposite. You're restricted. You're struggling. You're trying definitely not to get sick. And you have to tend your fires to make sure that there's warmth and you are cooking. Saturn, the planet of limitations, restrictions, challenges. There's no question about it. Baba Luaye, plagues. Where's the energy here in the pathologies or pantheons that hits sickness, illnesses, and plagues? That would be Baba Luaye, the owner of the earth. You can go all the way, my goodness, to all of them. Polio, scarlet fever, everything that has ever come on the planet before now. That's Abaluaye, we call it. And then, of course, Pluto, furthest out there. And then, you know, there's more. Planet X, Nibiru, there's tons. We'd be here all day. But we have the 7 major planets. And when we see these moving in various conjunctions or grand crosses or trines, that means something's going on together. That's something going on together. And if you can understand how, like, oh yeah, wind, storms, hurricanes, could get crazy. Shango, fire, earthquakes, rumbles, okay? You know, Olokun, tsunamis. You see what I'm saying? I can go all the way through all those planets and tell you a force in nature that where that planet is moving or who it's conjunct to or how that's hitting is going to affect this, because this planet is part of that solar system. We're all moving around Olorun, the sun. the sun. And it's so good to consider. You could consider so many things. You say, oh, my sun sign is Pisces. This is how that orbit looks for people around my orbit. This is how they see me, or this is how I am showing up for myself. Are you the sun of your orbit, I'm asking you? Do you know where the Legba person, I know where my Coyote and the Legba and Mercury people, I do. I know where my lovers and my peaceful, they keep the sweetness all the time, our Shun's daughters, they do. Most of them daughters, a couple of them are male priests, but they just carry my first grandson, born under the season of Oshun. Very sweet, just the sweetest young man you want to know. Not easy to fire or temper. Then you know those kind. Shangos, Leos, pretty fiery overall. Yeah. And so this was good medicine that my Eolosha gave me. And when we wanted to know how were we going to walk in this priest of Obatala, she said, know the signs and know the types. And then you won't ever find yourself wasting your breath with people that even couldn't even possibly understand what you were saying or what you wanted to know. If you know their sign and you know their type, whether they move in an element of fire or very touchy heart, space, water, where, then you know how to form the words that you want to speak in another language, which we'll get to it in a minute in the NVC, the nonviolent communication. It says, know the universal needs of all human beings, and you might do well to speak better. So, Trace, I'm going to jump you in right here and just say we've looked forward to this for a while. Obviously, we do. Whenever we're separated from one another, we go, okay, well, we're going to record. We're here together. And so what do you think is really up in this season? On the first day of your new year, just stepped into your solar return. What do you think we've really got to know, Trace, that in one way or another, from Kindred or just you and me, or what we've tried to post and what we are trying to post on the Kindred channel, where do we need to be dabbling and really working with what people are able to digest right here in July 2020?
Well, I would have to say, for me right now, the real important work is definitely that inner work, and tracking where your triggers are, and cleaning and clearing as much of that stuff out as possible, whether it is from your upbringing, or it's connected ancestrally, or there's even some past life stuff that has a tendency to bubble up. For me, those are the things that I feel are most important right now to be paying attention to, because what we clean up inside, as you well know, we clean up out and around us. You had made mention of what you said earlier about being able to listen to God, Creator, the ancestors, whomever you feel that to be speaking to you. It's prayer is when you talk to Creator. Meditation, especially out in nature, is when Creator talks to you.
We hit such big things when you put it out there like that, and hopefully everybody heard that. And they would look around and say, yes, this is a time of the great turning of the wheel of the earth and a great awakening. And in that awakening, people arrive just like that, almost like all of the noise, all of the radio stations they had that got them from the eyes opening to the eyes closing in any 24 hours, it was cut off. Just almost like the power went out, like a storm hitting, the power went out. And suddenly all that was left was the conversations in here. I came up all the way south yesterday from Oyotunji African Village through my house in Georgia to here in Waynesville, North Carolina, about a 6.5 hour, no radio, no music, no one riding with me. And I was fully in conversation. Like my conversations hadn't quit when the car parked in your driveway and I stopped. That's like how many conversations that I need the time, just me. No distractions, no texts, no phone calls, no pull away from that conversation. Have you thought about this? Well, what are you going to do about that? Well, how far are you looking out there? So it's the I just want to put a post-it, grab that and put a post-it in it, because I know people would hear you say what you just said and they go, yeah, I recognize that I'm somewhere. It's almost like getting dropped in this new unknown, and the quotes were talking about it, but not yet having the tools of inner tracking or exquisite listening or a mentor or a teacher, somebody they could call, or a tarot deck, or I'll try this. And they go, how am I supposed to find and plug into in myself, that magical place where the connection is, the downloads are, the deeper thoughts are? Usually, Trace, and that's going to hit a bunch of these questions, the reason people don't go there is because it's filled with pain. It's filled with pain and bad memories and not good people. Not, you see it, the little child that remembers all that be like, no, I'm not going over there. Good. Let's turn on the radio. Let's call up Joe. Let's text so-and-so. Let's play on Facebook. Let's watch Netflix. And their constant movement through a day will be propelled over what they can do from the external next. That keeps that wheel of, don't go over here, it hurts. It hurts. And once you get yourself into that bigger hurt, what you gonna do? See, and now we got people from suicide to a drink to other drugs to, they don't know what to do with that other than numb it or melt it down. And there's a lot of them. You know, maybe the shelter in place created even more isolation than we had a minute ago. But the people I'm hearing from now are very isolated because they come, the little we do, Trace, they thank us so much because it's like a little piece of community that they have in otherwise nothingness. I could name 5 people right off the top of my head. No one. If they weren't talking to themselves, they wouldn't hear the sound of any voice unless they were listening to a video, because they live that alone and are sheltered and isolated now. So yeah, so let's tackle, sort of, we hit it a little bit, but our first question here was, how do we hold several truths at the same time? And I guess if we were going to pull the conclusion we just came to, we go, okay, well, either you're going to sit and sort out your own inner truths, or you're going to deal with what other people say is true from minute to minute out here in the external factors, or you're going to find that bridge. The lighthouse of you is going to shine light on. Where's the middle ground between that elusive truth that's out there right now for people that can find the courage to tell the truth, and a truth that some people doesn't even know that exists inside of them? What would we say that we learned through the Lighthouse Summit? I have some good ones, but I'm gonna let you go. The Lighthouse Summit and the Harmonic Convergence that answers that as tools for, I need to hold that and I need to hold that. You know, and the important thing, I think, is this era of age of Aquarius that says, do you have to be fully on board with this truth over here and agree with it? No, not necessarily. You have to be fully on board with this one. And so before, a minute ago, in the old paradigm, you couldn't hold on to both because one would clash, and then you'd fall into the right or wrong, or the night or day, or the good or bad. Can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore. You got to hold them all. And that means that we have to find a way. This is where we agree to disagree, I say. But you go. What do you think we need in order to hold several truths at the same time?
First and foremost, an open mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
To have the ability to step into the shoes of another person.
Empathy.
And see it from their perspective. How would you feel being in whatever that particular position is?
Here's the tough work, Tracy, because you know what? It reflected, and I know you know that. Just what you said reflected right back on the top. I think if I were to track it from our early morning coffee talks, it was from Mary Trump's phenomenal Dada that's out here, to how the model of that hits the Hildress. You recognize it. You see where it can be damaging and dysfunctional to a family. And so we've all witnessed her growing up, her ability to say, 2016 or back where she was a child, yeah, okay, I'll just take that, Uncle Don. And now in 2020, no, you dangerous, boo. I'm gonna have to speak the truth, because I find in what you're saying, if people suddenly come to the place where they can call out the truth in the middle of something that someone is projecting onto them, or a negative, or something that comes in from the outside that is not your truth, what I find, and of course that's the buzz right here today. People are just out of their minds that this type of thing is going on, and no elected officials are jumping in, okay? Not those that were running for president, not the Republicans, not the senators, nobody. Suddenly nobody has anything to say. And this is the question that we're asking. What has disempowered us as a people to feel like if you say something negative or out of order to me, I cannot reach into my most compassionate and empathetic self to hold it up for you in this mirror. That's my next one. Down here says, relationships are our personal mirrors to show you where it hurt me, how it hit me, before you get to whatever they said, and whether you could answer it or not. I do that. I have to. That's part of the, I think, remaining in authenticity, where a minute ago, the people pleasers in us, the nice girls, those kinds of things that era thought that they were raising us up to be. And we took a lot of hits, and we lost a lot of people, male and female, who couldn't take the pressure, suicide, on the way out, drinking. You and I can both name that. And it all comes back to this step right here, that if somebody flip you a joker card out their mouth or in their actions, you could leave it there and blame them and be the victim and everything like that. Or you could hold up the mirror for them and say, let me show you how that really felt. Let me offer that back to you. I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to try and knock you down, but I am going to offer exactly what you just tossed at me. I'm going to offer it back to you so that you could look at it and experience how that feels. And I guess it's in my prayer. It's in both our prayers when we light candles and we hold the altar space that we do, that people find that courage. I mean, to a degree, that's what Mary Trump said. That was really over and above. That story has always been the story. That story didn't just come up today. That story had been the story since 30, 40 years ago. But today, she recognizes that some of us, and her point is quite true, you could have a problem child right there. And how much of a problem is the problem child if they have one enabler or they have thousands of enablers, you see. And that was the tipping point for her. It's the tipping point for me, actually. It's why we're making videos like this, point blank, really, because if we do not, you see, if you're not part of the solution, then you must still be in the problem. And if we're not able to identify what parts of the solution we're stirring in our own cauldrons, no, maybe we don't have all the answers, but we daggone sure better be putting the ingredients of solutions in to stir together. Otherwise, we're wasting time here. So I don't know, anything else you want to say on that before we go to our next question, which is really a goodie?
No, you're pretty good at covering stuff.
All right, this is the one that we did, and if we just hit it really again. I love the way they all dovetail. The next question was, how serious and committed are any of us to improving our communication skills? I'm going to put a little foreground out here because I want people to really feel the power of this question. This question is like, You know, when you're a new mother, or even there are new smaller ones around, and you realize that your mouth has gotten a little trashy because maybe you weren't around little younger littles, and so the people that you normally communicate with, they can handle little trashy. You know, that's what my grandmother said. She said, why you use other people's, you don't let your ears be garbage cans, and don't assume that other people's ears are garbage cans. So, you know, infamously, we would get the little bank and you put a quarter in if you said a bad word and so forth. And that for me was an active action. You say you're going to clean up the words that come out of your mouth, and your child is there to tell you a quarter. You just said the SH word. Okay, a quarter. And suddenly you find yourself accountable to the child, because your agreement was, I don't want you to repeat those words. I don't want you to hear those words. So I will take an action in my own life that makes me more present with the words that need to be cut out of my vocabulary. This, in the day of Black Lives Matter, and right where we are right now, is huge. Oh my God, it's huge. What words, hate, what words do we just right here want to throw out of the vocabulary? If we're intelligent people trying to access divine intelligence, otherworldly intelligence, and want to take each other seriously, that means we come with a certain command and discipline over the way that we communicate with one another. And yes, we can still be triggered or fired up, or we'll speak out of turn, or maybe have to even give an apology because we didn't really mean what we said at the time, but we got triggered. You know, there's lots of parts to it. We're not claiming any perfection in this area. We're just saying that people are seriously giving a lot of lip service to this conversation with no tools. Which leads me to this question to go, okay, I just said it. I said it so many times this week, it worries me. You know, in particular, we'll call it out in the power and privilege, the white supremacy conversation, to where still today, this Saturday, there are thousands of people in streets, hopefully not in Oregon, where they're taking protesters into unmarked cars now, but yeah, that are out there shouting, painting streets, Black Lives Matter. And they can't remember whether or not they fulfilled the last thing they said to a Black person in their life. This contradictory. This is a problem. This is a problem. When the words, and I think if I were going to put a part B to this question, why are we asking this question? Because if you are not willing to fine tune, like people give a tune up to the car, if you are not willing to fine tune your communication skills, then your mouth, you gonna open your mouth and yeah, sugar, honey, iced tea is going to fall out. You have no accountability, no responsibility for the words that you just said. You don't even know the power of the meaning of it. And yet, on the lives of people of color that are no longer breathing, ain't no sense to talk about I can't breathe. They are no longer breathing for a lack of positive actions that catch up with the words you're speaking. Yeah, go ahead, speak to that.
Well, I think a lot of that also has to do with knowing how to walk the talk. Because, you know, people could clean up their words and their mouths all they want, but if they're not following through with what it is they commit to, and if they're not being held accountable for not following through, they're not walking the talk, bottom line. And to me, that's the proving ground. I've seen lots of people that talk all day long, honestly, because I think they like the sound of their own voice. But are they actually walking that? Are they actually doing anything in that respect? Do they have that level of integrity? A lot of them don't. And it's a lot, I think it has more of an unconscious level for them than, you know, being self-aware enough to realize wow, I'm not in integrity. I'm not walking my talk. And again, for me, that brings it back around to self-awareness. If you are acutely aware of what it is you are doing and how you are, leaving your footsteps on this earth and in the lives of other people, what kind of impact are you having? Is it a positive impact, a negative one, a healthy and unhealthy one? What are you trying to do in this world? Me personally, I want to see big change because I have a grandson now, and he is my best friend, and I want to see a better world for him. All of
It
those.
makes us, they make us, those little ones, they really make us, because I know in the generation I came up, I took issue. I really did. And I had to figure out as a child, because that was back in the place where, children were seen, not heard. And so when the adults or older people around me fell into where we are now in this world, that your examples in front of you will totally tell you, don't do as I do as I say do. Okay, we're just too far prevalent with that whole situation right now, because you say what makes people have such, we had 6 hour work at webinar this week, and at least an hour of it was on this. Do we all have the same definition of a level of integrity? Yeah, it's good for us to say that as a team, we all need to hold each other accountable in a place of integrity, except those are all at different levels, all with based on how we were raised, who raised us, and all like that. All of us have different levels of integrity. And so finally we had to agree that our common ground for integrity in that conversation with me, your word is your bond. If you're not going to do it, don't say you're going to do it. Okay, how about that? How about we start slow? And so that's what I would still say, is that, how was integrity shaped or formed in each of us? And yes, what happens when you live where your leaders, your elected officials, your people in charge of governments, medical, life, death situations will tell you, don't do as I do as I say do. And whether or not you believe what I say, well, that's another whole story, okay? It depends on which newspaper you read today. That's crazy, you see? And so it gets down to that conversation in ourselves that I'm hoping that Kindred of Sangoma and the teachings and the activities that we support go into the conversation that you and I are both having about this inside your own soul conversation, because really you can't too much affect all of that outside of yourself. The big change that can go on is inside of us. And then, people, the lost ships see the light from our lighthouse, and they go, oh, that's how to do it. I've always seen it. My godmother said it to me. She said, larger, because how do you do that? We need the rule book. How do you do this? She said, you seem lost. If you are really lost, watch me. You know how powerful that is for an older person to really say that to you? Because what I found out, because I've now said it to younger people too, what it does is it makes you do double time. It's like double Dutch. It makes you automatically have to do double time if you give a younger person permission and encourage them to watch you for your own mistakes. Watch you as if you'll walk that. But I love that walk your talk, honey. That's from the 1987, we was really on that, in that harmonic conversion, to come here to 2020 and have that as a question, that no matter what our definitions of integrity or authenticity or empathy are we walking our talk? Are we walking our talk? I'm holding that for Web of Love tomorrow. I'm excited about that one. Okay, here's the fun part. We can go over and review and maybe give some tidbits to some of those. They were all fantastic conversations. I almost enjoyed the conversations with 5, 6 people that we had before we ever even got to the lighthouse, more than the lighthouse itself. So this question is, what have our takeaways been in the last month from the Summer Solstice Lighthouse Summit, which was the weekend virtual gathering? We enjoyed seeing people we don't get to see. We don't know when's the next time we'll see them, but we sure enjoyed having them. Yes, the rain is coming, and I do believe we'll be all right. And the harmonic conversion. I'll just start because mine are right at the top of my head. I am still incorporating amazing good stuff from working with Joy Ma'at and moving grief from the body through yoga. That was huge for me, definitely huge for me. Shamanic journeying, drum journeying. We might think, well, how's this going to work out? Us all in our houses, and we don't have the ability to go in the woods by a fire and beat a drum. Well, I think that Timmy Larode, who did some of our Germanic drum journeying, is going to do some virtual gatherings of just that. And I do know in the Wild Darling community, some that do yoga. That's exactly what they do. They create a Zoom call and people come in there and they mellow it out and they learn how to go the full roller coaster of their air, breath, and emotions, and how to balance that out in case you get too supercharged by any of this that's going on outside and around us. Janara's ritual to embody the sun. Of course, myself being a person born on Sunday, I have known that medicine for years. It was good to do it again. I go and try and do it. It was normally a tradition for me to at least have 1 to 2 days a year that I'm at the ocean from sunrise to sunset doing exactly that, to just be that daughter of the sun and say, burn off what I don't need any longer. Fire up them engines of my self-starting, And so I really kind of know how to hold my relationship with the sun. But that was really good too. Well, and then there's the wealth of information we got from John Lee Rucker in Permajam, do's and don'ts, which you might want to know about Big Brother. Some people were a little sidetracked to the level of conspiracies. Those of us that know various parts that are true or know how to do that, know how to be given a ton of information, pick out what is truest for you, what hits where you actually live, and let the rest of it go. It doesn't apply to you. Okay. Gosh, it was a lot in there. Those were the real super highlights from the summit for me. And then, as I said, the power of, I want to talk to Wolfie again. Damn, that was good. And in fact, we got to do that. Yeah, we're going to talk in a minute about coming back around to part 2 of our nonviolent conversations with Judy Langston down there in Tallahassee. And so, yes, we have to have the second cup of coffee with Baba Wolfie, because that was really, really, really good. Who else? Sarah Nash, yeah. Sarah Nash waiting on the edge, our labyrinth, our grid worker. She say, I got the bucket and the mop. Who gonna do the cleanup? It was so much. What adds something to that, Tracy? Because I could just be here now that I started picking and digging. I'm like, man, I loved every bit of it. Every bit of it.
Well, you definitely touched on quite a few of my favorite parts. Miss Judy's nonviolent communication was a big deal for me because, look at the world. And look at how quick people are to be triggered. Look at what happened in the classroom collective with that one young lady, and how she was triggered by her own, I guess, victimhood. And I thought I did a pretty good job trying to communicate with her about needing to respect elders, and but she had her stuff she was working through. And I feel that nonviolent communication, I went and bought the book. You saw it sitting in my house. I went and bought the book because I want to dive further into that, because I don't come from a space of real strong communication skills. it kind of appears that way because for a lot of years I worked in telecommunications. But that's communication on a business and a corporate level, which is something very different than, you know, that more interpersonal level. And that's where it needs to be right now with everyone. And I'm really good at finding common ground, and that sort of thing. But it's really hard to find common ground with somebody when all they can focus on is the color of your skin.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think about when I think about what causes the biggest like collisions, like car collisions in talking, it's what we, you know, gosh, learned about lashing out and just reactionary words, and you know, that whole zone. And I think the powerful thing that Camp Judy, and she's such the right one. Sometimes people are so well suited for the gifts or the ministries that they're given, and Judy really is. That it's almost like the unschooling. When I visited the unschooling there in Athens, Georgia, beautiful school created by a friend of ours, and it's not so much let me like pour into you all these teachings. How about I start peeling back the layers of what you have already learned that you need to unlearn right here in
Yeah.
order to go ahead. And when she started getting into, you know, just these tools inside of NVC, that is how it felt. It felt like we were not only examining two different list of spelling words or vocabulary words, but we were really looking at, number one, all that you just said. Did the person really get what you meant, or what you thought you meant, or what you wanted to say? Did they get any of that out of what you said, or vice versa? And that's, to me, what NVC exposes to each of us, is how ineffective our language, our current use of the language really is. And, you know, now that we don't have the hugs or the intimacy that we have in that place where words got in the way before, now we are really, I know I am very conscious, particularly in all these things, 8 Zoom calls a week, that my friends that I haven't seen, I want the presence of me to feel like a hug, feel like you just left Sangoma's hug, and vice versa, that I feel like I just left their hug, and to be able to achieve that with words that are not violent, that don't have, they're not in the wrong tone, they're not in the wrong language, they don't have double meanings, they're, you know how people could say that little side talk and they say something that you got a little side curve to it, a little half-handed, half-bent compliment and stuff.
Well, sure. You know, and something else too, in a text-based format, when you remove facial expression and, you know, inflection on words when you're speaking, and tone of voice and body language, it really leaves it wide open to interpretation, and people interpret through different lenses.
And again, there's so many lenses. That's what we're working on right now. Healing these tremendous levels of pain in people's body temples.
Well, speaking on that, okay, I'm speaking for white folks here, okay? We come from, we are so far removed from our actual roots, and there has, it's just been generation after generation of, you know, victimization onto, you know, whomever, whether it's another race, another country, another whatever. You know, we get called nowadays the colonizers, and, you know, all these different terms. But, you know, if you really look back in your history, you know, speaking of my lineage specifically, my roots have been traced back to the Celtic tribes, and Rome did it to the Celtic tribes. They were removed from their roots. Now, I specifically my roots have been traced back to the Germanic Celts, and the Germanic Celts used to. Okay, I don't know the Celtic term, but it translates to fire in the head. Okay, so when they went into battle and they defeated their enemy, they believed that if they lopped off the head and held on to that head, that they held that enemy's power, that it was assimilated into them. And in their burial grounds and stuff, these they would find these figures of power from those times, you know, full body, buried there with a whole bunch of extra heads off to the side. Now, this is something, you know, that of course carried through history in one fashion or another. Fast forward to when white man came to this continent and they battled against the Native American tribes, and, you know, it basically did what they could in an effort to eradicate them, unnecessarily so, but they were the colonizers, the dominators, you know, they believed themselves to be superior. That mentality was basically programmed into them through centuries of this same level of behavior. And it becomes where the victim, because that's what they've been subjected to. It's like I had mentioned to you before, it's kind of like children that have been sexually abused, and then they, you know, not all of them, right, not all of them, mind you, but they grow up, the abused grows up to become the abuser. So the victims become the victimizer. So somewhere along the way, this lopping off the heads carried forth in that, you know, attempt to, you know, dismantle Native American culture. And they did that to Native Americans. Me knowing the level of history and everything that I do, I came into possession, it was of a Native American skull. It was purchased for a friend of mine from a pawn shop, of all places. There was the remnants of a medicine bag and a horsehair braid, and it was all set up on this little display. Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. When I pulled it out of the box, you know, the feeling I got from it was that it was glad to be out of the box. It just wanted to be free. Knowing what I know about history and, you know, the lineage that I come from, and that stuff comes through the DNA somehow. Don't ask me how, but it does. But when it come to me, I knew that was something that I needed to correct. So I took the efforts necessary to get that skull back to his descendants, where those remains could be placed with the other ancestral remains and, you know, could rest in peace. That, because that's what I felt in my heart was the thing that needed to be done. And when I did that, I don't know how to explain this. This is one of those empath things, but there was a change in the vibration, you know?
Yeah.
And for me personally, that's what my work is about. Anything and everything that I can correct within myself and apologize for, you know, whatever history I come from, or ancestry or lineage or whatever, we need to set this right. However, that all does have to start within, and fixing those things within you, because you can't really hear that you know, voice of God or the creator, ancestors, you know, the whole list that you gave earlier. You can't really hear that until you clean out all of that clutter. and all of that damage and all of that negative, distorted vibration. It's just like a guitar. You know when you've got one of your strings or more than one of your strings out of tune. You strum it and you get that, kind of funky sound out of it. I kind of work the energy like a musical instrument until I know I've got beautiful music going on.
Yeah.
And, as it stands in my personal world right now, the only occasional out of tune chord I get is from my own children.
You know what that reminded me of? Somebody was asking or talking about, maybe it was you, how many times we've been to Black Mountain, where we're headed down here when we leave. I haven't been there a lot, but I do know that years ago when I met Jonathan Santos at the grief gathering of Sambofu Maladome, who is now an ancestor, of course, in heaven. And, well, you could say 1,000 things about the force of that even going on and collective community grief rituals. That's a whole nother discussion in itself. But as you were speaking, what came up for me in that, what can you take in if like the closet of all this is way too cluttered? There's just way too much stuff in there. I thought about on the final day of it and wrapping up, and of course people have been supporting midwives of people through the shedding of tons of pain. And so we wanted to agree as a collective, how would we transition and move into support for you next Thursday and a month from now? And what does that look like? So we agreed to have this open chat area. It wasn't as powerful as it is now. I think that was 8-10 years ago. And so in there, when I got back home, I'd almost forgotten about it. And then I got the link and here comes all the comments and stuff. And one woman shared with us, she said, I got home and it was just like I had to take everything in my refrigerator out. She said, I started eating and I've been eating for 3 days. And she said, it occurred to me that I was so filled with grief before I went to that weekend that I don't know the last time I ate food. Yeah, let your mind wrap around. Yeah. I just stopped and looked at the machine to see if I was reading it right. And that's what she said. And that's what she meant. And then she went on to thank the people who had helped release what obviously was a mountain of grief, that like a Gandhi, like I ain't talking maybe last week, like her body was starving, like more than weeks had gone by since she had eaten any real meal or food, because everything inside of her, physical, emotional, mental, everywhere, every corner inch of her being was filled with grief. And she was so deep in the forest, she could not see the trees. And so I do think about that. I do think about that when there's, just tons of ancestral trauma, overload of childhood trauma, you name it, we've been through it. We've seen it show up. And yeah. And this is where we are now, that gracefully, I do think some of the energetics bringing us to the harmonic convergence, are bringing us to awakening lighter than that, where we seem to be some of us awakening in a consciousness that has already dropped those bad memories or big levels of pieces from our ancestors that we can't change. We can't go back and change it. What our changing does is to develop who we are now and how much a greater light than we have now than in the dark days and the dark times, and those types of things that we say, that's not humanity, that's not us, and we don't want to be a part of that. Well, speaking of way back when you flip the pages, here we are on question number 4, and we want to get to them because these are only questions, and we want to say, say it right here, that this, we felt like, again, was to stimulate what are the conversations we are really waiting to have right now. And Tracy and I, as we navigate our way to the fall quarter of the Mystic School of Alchemy, go, well, who's in the classroom collective and what the hell are they talking about or thinking about these days? Some people post regularly and we know, but most don't. And the Mystic School of Alchemy. How well is that alchemy going over there? I don't know. So we hope that, like, we have these questions. We, over coffee this morning, we thought, well, what are the real questions that we hope we're thinking about and coming to some answers for? Maybe it'll be a forum next time. Yeah, how about that? The fall quarter forum. Since we had the summer Lighthouse Summit, it'll come together. And hopefully we will progress, because you know how I have a personal pet peeve for talking about the same thing I already talked about. I won't do that. I'm not in spiritual special ed. I'm not going to the same classes. I'm not carrying the same books. I am not. I'm in a forward progression. I said that a minute ago. That's when I get jumped off, probably last night when I get in here, to understand that, we can't entertain a lot of bogus stuff right now. This is the point, as Janet Jackson has said, between education and catastrophe. And if we are educated, if we know better, then whatever this bill of good is that says you can risk your life to go to jail, you can have the Hunger Games and risk your children's lives and send them to school, you can do any of these things. And if you're a person like me in this skin color, you can walk around thinking that there aren't people with guns who would just shoot you for the time of day or stuff you into an unmarked car. You would be naive. How about that? It's not that you walk around looking on the dark side, or you're not an optimistic enough person. A person of color right now who is not moving in that awareness as a danger equal, if not greater than COVID, if you live in the South, is just that you're lying to yourself, okay, boo? And it's time to get past that.
Well,
Yeah.
let me chime in here. For those folks that, want to get to the level like Sarah Nash spoke up about bringing her mop and bucket, okay? On the harmonic convergence, I think it was day 2, Paul Levy was a guest, and he was interviewed. And anybody that wants to learn more about tracking that inner junk and whatnot, I highly, highly recommend following Paul Levy. awakeninthedream.com, I believe, is his website. And I've been following him for close to 20 years now. And his writings are amazing. And, he speaks on what the Native Americans call Watiko, and what they call the virus of the mind and spirit. And the man is pure genius, in my opinion, truly. And, comes from, that same kind of troubled background with his father that I do, and I can't recommend that enough for folks.
Yeah, he was dynamic. This is what I love. The people, like, even, from a Robert De Niro to like a Paul Levy, there's so many people that are like, yeah, see, bucket list. If I could have just one evening dinner and chill and talk to this person for even 2 to 3 hours, life would be good. Life would be really good. So we had 2 targeted questions here at the end, and we're just going to put it out there because we're all inclusive. And this one, it came up. I think I have to give you the content of how I have to come to this question. And as we do these circles in mixed groups or groups of people of color in communities of color and or not, in creating this BIPOC, Thunder. See, I told you, Thunder erratic energy just coming on in, and we're wrapping up. So I think we're gonna make it before the big deluge comes down. But it came up because people of color who are in a conversation with a much larger group of power and privilege, and they're trying to unload or unravel the stuff that has been stumping them so far, and creating the proper invitation to include other cultures or persons other than themselves, or not on the same level of privilege as themselves, into a common conversation. We're coming to, we felt like we had to just talk with one another after that was over. And we did. We set up a conversation for just the people of color who were on that particular webinar. And so we were chewing around, okay, wonderful. And isn't this nice that now we just don't get asked to, shed all this wisdom or dig deep into the tragedy of our respective souls. We had a Haudenosaunee, we had African, and we had a Latinx representing right there in that conversation. And so it got down to what is our readiness, speaking these people on the phone, to come to the conversation, to come to the table with the conversation. You mean you've been going 400 plus years talking about equality and social justice, and what you would do or what you could do better for the communities that are disenfranchised if you had this, and this, and now you got 20 something people on a Zoom call that all have this, and this, and what you mean? You don't know, or if what? And so then it opened this like amazingness where I thought, no, that can't be true. It can't be true that people of color have been pushed so far down into how to survive. Okay, so how to survive in their current situation, that they didn't have time to think about it. I mean, I'd like to think that Spike Lee, when he named his production company 40 Acres and a Mule, he thought about it. And he thought about that's daggone why he was going to make that the name. And what? You can look to his work. You can look to any of his work. The documentary of the 4 girls in the bombing in the church, the when the levees broke, of the Katrina in New Orleans, and see that he will constantly be telling you the plight of a certain level of people, Malcolm X, that they don't have 40 acres and a mule. They don't have any advantages here. And here's the story. Why it looks like this: because of these inequalities. Why the COVID numbers look like this: because of those inequalities. Why the unemployment numbers look like this. So when we are now moving to the tables of conversation toward BIPOC and how we should set that up, and whether it's a really great idea to have all mixed diversities of peoples in the room, but you only going to stay in one dominant story, history, culture. You're not going to give the full story of everybody's. You could just go stay on one. No, these things are unacceptable moving forward. We have learned, and there would be no need at this point to repeat those mistakes. No need. We have nothing to profit. Our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren have zero to gain trying to work their way forward from some lies. I'm telling you what, the people in the course of all different tribes right now, and I'm speaking basically of Europe's children, that are they're sorting it out. And I just, as a person of color, I'd be just loving just trying to be there is somewhat of an easy place, as opposed to helping them try and sort it out and come up with the answer. The easiest place is to say, I know that must be horrible. Isn't that horrible that you thought that all this time? It's kind of like the night where, you were like, Rosewood, what happened in Florida? What? And about Rosewood, that you lived in Florida all your years and didn't know that, you see? And so, and it triggered a whole number of things where the same confused people over here that were trying to catch up, okay, with the fury hitting the ground after George Floyd. And I said to them, do you know, while the boys talk about going over to Tulsa on Juneteenth, do you even have any background of what a Tulsa was before the bombs, after the bombs, how many people died, how many ghosts are still there? Has any spiritual work been done to like clean up that ancestral da-da? No, Trace. This is so irritating to me, but I try not to get irritated about it. I try to just voice it out here to people and say, we need to do better. You cannot be sitting at the table for BIPOC, okay, or Black Lives Matter, not having done your homework. And so, yes, I will wrap it up, beloved. And I will say that this daughter here, that's why I love her. That's why we'll go many more lifetimes together. I know a few people like Tracy, you see. And if you expose to them an empty fill in the blank where like they might know that they need that information, they will get it. And she stayed up till 4 a.m. to get it. And so now if you need it, if you find that you were in a conversation where you really just don't have enough of no in the background, know that Tracy Dees took the time to just put together a couple of TED Talks for you, couple of massacres, couple of things you might want to have under your belt, having that conversation. Because if not, your ignorance will be showing like a slip hanging. And people like us who have been waiting 400 plus years to have this conversation will consider your shit null and void. We would consider, it's like I said to Trace this morning, why would we even be talking with a man that has children, separated families, and have children in case you want to talk to him about whether or not it's safe for our kids to go to public school? Come on, really? Where you base that on? Yeah, there's no conversation there. So the question we didn't get to, since we do need to wrap it up, why are we, which I just said, see how it all dovetail in? Yep. And so the last question, which we're going to leave, and maybe it'll be the first question on our survey, why are we trying to form choices with only half the information in the room? So whether or not it's our list of resources or you check out the teachings and the videos, we do try and update you, whether it's astrology or however it comes to us, we're going to share it with you. Get a little more information in the room. How about that? If you know you don't even have half the information in the room right now in these conversations, try to work toward personally in that inner tracking that Tracy was speaking about, and things that we can offer you externally that bring you to having at least 2/3 of the information in the room. Try, and I have a couple of things that I know that I have to come back to you that I always forget to say. But one is, if you like this video, we really are getting very serious now about you hitting the little thumbs up or the like button or letting us know, and to mobilate our way around the machine world, because the machine world is pretty much having to do the deal right here until we get different in this pandemic. So you're always going to know what we're into at kindredofsangoma.org, the website. You're always going to know. It gives an overview. I just sent a lady there the other day for this Still We Rise. Wonderful. You'll see more of that coming up. We'll be in Nashville first part of August for that. And I said to her, I said, go to a page on the website. There it gives the choice, because now, like a menu at a takeout buffet, you might have to consider, well, is it medicine wheels? Is it nature, culture, spirit? Is it what part of what Sangoma is teaching, where and when do I need to incorporate right now? So yeah, we love likes and shares. We'd love for you to visit us here on Kindred of Sangoma YouTube more often. Like, share, subscribe. Why? Because we just hired our grandbaby girl, because we try to be very in our integrity with Tracy, who makes all of this happen. And so far, she just knows that we love her, and we give her a little dash when our Social Security comes in. But you, Kindred, you could be a part of that, because YouTube and all these things have their systems. When we have so many viewers or so many subscribers, it begins to happen. And what are we excited about? We're excited about Still to Rise coming up in Asheville in August. We're excited about, we don't know how it's going to happen, but they say we're going to move into some type of oracle reading on a weekly, if not monthly basis. I'd love to see it happen on the full or the new moon each month. We are getting prepared for our fall quarter of the Mystic School of Alchemy. And yeah, and the 50th anniversary is kind of shaping up. Tracy said, well, a minute ago you were going to just move the RV up to the mountains. What are you doing? And I said, well, I went down there and I saw some people hard at work, and their actions finally caught up with a lot of lip service that was sliding out all over the way. And I like people who put their action where their mouths are, because I'm going to close with this. It's our deeds that get us into heaven, not our words. I'm never moved by a person's words. When you show me who you are, that's when you can count on my belief. I'm not going to go for the paper handouts, boo. Please. I'm a little too old for that. I'm no longer in my 20s or 30s where I might go for that. It's our deeds that get us into heaven, not our words. So till the next time, we love you bunches. Got that Wakanda, remember? Remember Grandmother Flora de Mayo and all the starseeds that are anchoring our lighthouses so our lights never go out, never go out. Peace be with you.